Hello, my name is Ebbe Sønderskov. I come from Denmark, and I'm here with Janus, sitting here making a review or a deck tech over this deck I have here. The deck is called Disc-o-Trol, and I will try to put it into some different phases because when you build a deck, you always have some kind of a core. So I put in the core around here and say this is what I never put out of the deck, and this is what always would be in the core of my Disc-o-Trol deck. And some of the other cards surrounding the deck in the sides here. These are the cards that are in situationally. So if I want to make a different build, then some cards wouldn't stick, and so forth. On the side over here is my sideboard. For the tournament, I'm not totally committed to that yet. I'm not also totally committed to the deck yet, so I have some possibilities that I'm still looking into. And on the left side over here, I'll try in the end of the deck tech to pull you through what possibilities do you have if you want to make a different deck. So first off, what is the deck? What is it built around, and why do I make the choices that I make? So this is what I'm going to use around, I think, 5, maybe 10 minutes for, and I'll try to be the devil's advocate while I do it. So first off, we'll play at this old school event on Saturday, and some of the things that are different, or one of the things that are different to at the beginning, is that you only have the opportunity to play with one city in a bottle, so it's restricted. The meaning of that, in my opinion, is we could get into a long argument that will probably be a lot of waste of time, but it gives the format a lot of possibilities instead, because that the card is so powerful that you could like compare it to a balance or stuff like that. You could compare it to other restricted cards, and that normally holds a lot of people, a lot of cards out. I actually have 5 cards here that I would normally not play. I love those cards, but I won't play it. I don't think it was the meaning of putting in a city in a bottle to hold out some creatures, but on the other hand, you just have to deal with the hand you are dealt. So the rules here, I think, is a very interesting, because I will try to make another build. I can see myself playing with some of the Arabian Night creatures, even though I would. I would in some points or in some situations maybe lose, but I also have a city in a bottle and sideboard, because I would try to build a deck that has different opportunities depending on what I'm running against. So this is what the thoughts are. If we try to look at the core of the deck, we have, of course, our Lotus. I have 4 Moxes in. Don't need the 5th one. Sol Ring, all of that things. 1 Brain Geyser is here, and the three blue. So this is these cards I wouldn't change around the deck, because they all have a good value. Then you have the Sedge Trolls and the Nivenul's Disc you have here. You could have 4 Nivenul's Disc if you wanted to, but on the other hand, I've been trying to sit with the 2 Nivenul's Disc on your starting hand, and that's just not very constructive. So, in my opinion, 3 is the best number, and you could have 1 in sideboard if you want to. So these cards I wouldn't take out or put in. And the same with the Demonic Tutor and the Mind Twist. It's also what I would call not optional. Over here, you have the bolts and the fireball. You could maybe take out 1 lightning bolt, because what you want to use these cards for is pretty obvious. It's for spot removals. It's for maybe bolting your opponent with a fireball, or maybe bolting him in the end. You have some possibilities with the bolt that you do not have, for example, with the Swords to Plowshares. So the idea with this is that you could remove some fast creatures to get some control, so that you could use your deck in the mid game or on the end game. This deck is very good in the mid game because when you build a board, and the concept of the deck is to build a board and then grind the opponent down. You maybe have equal cards, so you sit with 1, 2, or 3 cards on the hand, and the same does your opponent. Then at some point you would probably get an Evaluals disc, and then you can swipe the board. And the board swipe means that you are probably in front because you do have the set trolls, you do have some decent draws, and you do have a brain guy, so you do have some other draws that can make you regain your lost ground. So you're not that worried about not having cards in this deck because the cards you draw are usually pretty powerful. If we continue down here, these are like very optional. So some build a deck around a lot more counter spells. I have 1 mana drain, 2 counter spells. The reason that I do have it is because I do not want to draw 1 in my starting hand. If I do, I only want 1. But on the other hand, I do want 1 in the mid on the late game because there are so many powerful cards in this format, like for example a balance or a time twister or a mind twist or a break ice, and you can name it. There's a lot of very powerful cards that you do not want your opponent to throw down late game. I do not normally counter anything decent cards because I just want to hold them back for the really powerful ones. So this is not a counter deck, but it is some kind of a controlish deck that does want to make sure that your opponent does not fuck up your your plane. I have 1 Psionic Blast. The reason that I have that it's burn, so it does support your bolts, your fireball, and it could end up killing your opponent with the Sonic Blast. And of course, it's alpha, so I really love that one. And the last thing is that it's 4 of damage, so you have that as a counter for example, Sarah Angel, Sinkhole Vampire, and stuff like that. So the 4 damage does do something. Surrender Befried, for example. Then the thing that I did differently in this deck, I'll get to the other cards over here. The thing that I've tried to do different in this deck is that with the only one sit in a bottle, you do have the Jewsums and you do have the Surrender Befried, 2 very, very powerful cards. And the restriction does make these cards viable. I've been playing it before, and it's very powerful. For example, in the first turn, but second and third turn, if your opponent has 2 sit in a bottle, you're just very screwed, and they do not get what do you call it, get anything in their favor. So. But with only 1 sit in a bottle, they could be viable into play 2 and 3, even though the possibility is to throw it. So with these 2, and the concept of the deck is that you have like 4 set trolls, you have 3 Surrender Befried, so that's 7 3-cast creatures, and in my opinion, the best 3-cast creatures in the format. And by having them, you are actually a little faster than normal mid-range. So you put pressure on early in the beginning, and then you make your opponent react. And by making your opponent react in this deck, then you have a lot more possibility to gain control. The shadow over here, you could say, are they not overkill if you also have Nevenils? They could be, but you do need some sort of spot removal, for example, for Mishra's Factory or other things, because this is a second turn. What do you call it? Sacrifice, and you all know that. So you do need some sort of spot removal and artifact removal, also for KSO, for example. And then my favorite card in the deck, and where my Sideboard deck does a little what do you call it, is a little different from most of the other decks, is that I do play 4 sinkholes. The reason that I play 4 sinkhole is that to get a sinkhole in the second turn, if you start and your opponent play 1 land, it is also the same as getting a time walk. So if you start, even though you don't start, you have a lot of possibility to gain in. This card does, besides being like a time walk, also fuck up your opponent's mana. So by attacking with this deck on a lot of different angles, then you also make your opponent go on the defensive. So your opponent, he could like have a deck, and he says, I only need like 18 or 19 lands and a couple of moxes and stuff like that. So if I in my deck remove with a shatter a mox or sol ring or something like that, and also do remove a land, it could also be a Library of Alexandria. So I'm not worried about Library of Alexandria in this deck. I'm also not worried about a lot of things. There isn't like any cards that can totally screw up my deck. This is so it's very suitable and it's very flexible. The deck is a lot of dependent on sinkholes, and a lot less on the counters because the counters are secondaries. Then these two, I didn't put any words on those. It's Mind Twist and a Demonic Tutor. They speak for themselves, so I'm not going to go into them. The mana base you have up here, I have a one Maze of Ith in main because I do want to pull it with a Demonic Tutor if the opponent throws down a big big gun and I do not have any answer for it. Otherwise, I do have the Strip Mine, 2 Swamps, 4 Mishras, 2 City of Brass because you do not want to go all in on City of Brass. It's also the same with the City in a Bottle. You're a little afraid of that, but on the other hand, you do also need the swamps for your Sideboard, so it can get your pluses. So I do have 3 Badlands, 4 Underground, the 2 swamps, so that's 9 swamps in total. 3 volcanics and a Library of Alexandria. So all in all, what's that? Lands 5, 10, 11, 13, 17, 19 plus Strip Mine. That's 20 lanes with Strip Mine and a Maze of Ith besides that. So 21 lanes in the deck. Yeah, and that's around what I have to say about this deck. All in all, it's control in the beginning, but with the Surrender Retreats as an approach, I'll try to get a little more into that. With the Surrender Retreat, you do have a deck that's a little more pushy than the otherwise because you could also go for big late creatures. If you do that, you will be more on defensive. So you need to react instead of be proactive. That's also why I like Sinkhole better than the Counterspells, because Sinkholes are a lot more proactive. You can do a lot of things with the Sinkholes that you can't do with the Counterspells. If you're behind, you have you can't use your counterspells for very much, so you just sitting with them on your hand, and they don't do anything for you. Whereas these cards can move a Mishra, they can remove some land, or they can remove a blue land if you know he has counter, so he can counter your key spell and stuff like that. So this is how I use them. I think that these are the cards that do the most for the deck, the most underrated cards. The Nevinyr's Disc makes sure that the deck is very compatible because this is your one too many cards. This is the card that ensures that you can like remove 5 of your opponent's card and you only lose the disc and another card, so you can regain your ground if you are behind. Yeah. So this is the build so far. If we go to the sideboard, over here we have a Shivan Dragon. I do like to pull it in instead, maybe of some of the Surrender Befrees, depending on what I'm meeting. I do have 1 Blood Moon. The reason that I have Blood Moon is also the reason that I have 2 Swamps in my deck. I'm not that squishy to a Blood Moon. I do not want to play it because I do have a lot of dual lands and other lands, but I can live with the Blood Moon, and there are some very, very greedy decks out there. So this is what the Blood Moon helps me for. I do have 1 mace besides that. So where do I put in the extra mace is with decks that do play big creatures, and creatures that I cannot remove with my normal spot removals over here. The red blast and blue blast, 3 of both, is very viable. So what do I do? I'm going to put those in instead of maybe some counter spells, instead of maybe some pressure, but all depends on what I'm meaning. I have the 2 terrors primary for like attack and stuff like that. I do have the glooms. The glooms are like the most annoying, crazy sideboard card there is, because it's if you slam one on the board, then white colors can have a very different different time to regain their grounds, because some of the things that does give you the hardest trouble is like Swords of Plowshares for the set trolls, and the glooms do help you with that. I have one energy flux instead of a Nevinils. Some might say, why would he do that? Why would he not just have the fourth Nevinils disc? And as I said in the beginning, I do not want to have two Nevinils disc in my starting hand. I think it's a waste, and it's very slow and not that decent hand. On the other hand, the energy flux does something else that the disc does not do, and it's very good against other kinds of decks. For example, the robots, because this stays on the board, whereas the new disc disappears after use. So what is what is the possibilities that I've been thinking about this deck? I've been trying a lot of different builds. In the beginning, where I played this deck, I tried to play with the Troll, because it's a lot more core disc, because then you have more creatures that you can sack. But it's a 3 cast, the same as the Sedge Troll, the same as the Surrender Befried. And it doesn't really do anything for you, because the Mistress Factory can block it out. So in my opinion, this is maybe the budget card. It's not bad, but in my opinion, for a tournament, it's not viable. It's just too soft. I have the Wheel of Fortune over here as a possibility. I do not like playing with like Time Twister and Wheel of Fortune in this deck, because you're not like a total burn, you're mid range, and you do not want to plow all in. On the other hand, the card can save you in some situations and reload you. So my swap was that I would rather have a Brain Geyser played smartly. So after I know that my opponent is uh, is out of counterspells and stuff like that, than sitting with a Wheel of Fortune. And at the same time, the worst kind of hand, in my opinion, is sitting with a Time Twister and a Wheel of Fortune. That's just very, very poor. Guardian Beast is one of the things I'm still considering, because it's of course it's Arabian Nights, but it gives you some possibilities with the Chaos Orb, and the people who know that is that you can just flip it again and again and again. Same time, it does also work with the Nevinils disc, so it's a pretty viable combo, and it also makes your deck a little more resistant, but it also loses speed, and I do like speed and pressure, and sinkholes is the thing that I'm building my deck. um, then I tried in a period to play actually with the 2 mana vaults, 2 Dragons in main without the Serendipity and stuff like that, and that made the deck very much more explosive. So why do you want an explosive deck? Yeah, well, you do want an explosive deck if the meta is not that heavy on whites, and you meet like the attack decks and stuff like that, because you do not have the possibility to regain your ground. You do need to get down fast on the board, and here you can easily slam a Sheevan Dragon in turn 2, and an attack deck just can't handle a Sheevan Dragon in turn 2. Been trying that for like 30-40 games, and I do like it, but I just like this more right now. I could change my mind on Saturday. Um, if you have problems getting enough cards, you could put in a Jaden Tome, but it's also slow and it does not connect very well with these. So the thing that I used this for most is to sit with a tome, maybe slam a disc. If they counter it, then slam a tome afterwards. So primarily it was just bait. The Suchi and the Sulcana is the better choices if you're very worried about the city in a bottle. And on the other hand, you have like the counterspell here. You could put in an extra counterspell, but you can't go all counterspell, all sinkhole. So if you want to remove the sinkholes, you could do that. Then you could go heavy on the counters, and I would like make the deck a little more sustainable and a little more resistant to having that you could have a little more board control. And then the last card I have over here is actually one that I think that I just have to have in my deck because it's my all-time favorite card. It does have a little bit of synergy. I can't say that it's a lot, but there's like the Sinkholes, the Mind Twist, and the Demonic Tutor. There's like a couple of Jewsums, but it's a 5/5 for 5 mana. That's pretty decent, but it does not have any kickback. And normally, if you just slam this one on the board, normally you just win. It's very hard to handle. It's very hard to do anything about, and it's a legend. It's not in Arabian Nights. So, in my opinion, one of the best creatures in the format. And you do not have mana problems in this format as you do in, for example, Legacy and other kinds of formats. Should I, if I should get a little critical for myself and say, why do you do that? There's some cards in my deck that I sometimes think that could be a little too, what's the word, situational. It's not always that I think that the bolts are very good, but on the other hand, they do solve the things that you have to solve if you meet a very fast deck. The set trolls are just too slow because many times if you slam a set troll, you slam it normally at 3 if you know the opponent doesn't play, for example, lightning bolts. But if you meet like a burn deck, you do not want to slam it at 3 mana. You do want the extra mana for the regenerate. Then you can first slam it when you have 4 mana, and when you just slam it when you have 4 mana, then you're almost screwed because then you are at least down to half life and stuff like that. So in my opinion, the lightning bolt situational, the counter spells, and the sinkholes, they're like some sort of unity where you have to think about what is the plan with your deck. Otherwise, meta-wise, the cool thing is in old school is that when you build a deck, you're fucking going to hold that deck because these are very expensive cards. You all know that. I think that's why you play it. And at the same time, so this is like a deck I've been trying to build for around 1.5 years. I've been playing old school for like 3.5 years. This is my second deck or third deck in old school, but I'm also the type that likes to get a good angle on a deck and say, okay, this is a very viable deck. It's a little not the most popular. I don't like to play the most popular decks, but this is a viable deck that I'm trying to like build to some of my own. And then the plan is just to to build it. It's been taking me 1.5 years trying to get a lot of beta and alpha and still have a little white border left, but it's like a good hobby. And the problem is when it's all black bordered up, then I have to make a different deck because I need a new project. But yeah, that time will come, and I'll be looking forward to it. I just love building, and I think that this is yeah, I'm pretty happy about this deck as it is right now. In terms of my own deck, what's it good against? What is it weak against? The thing with my deck is that I do not think that it is weak against any decks. If I should say some deck, I would say maybe some sort of combo deck, maybe the uh, what do you call it, a twiddle time thing, but still I do have the disc. It could also be some sort of the what do you call it, Underworld Dreams deck or stuff like that. My deck could have a hard time handling that because I do not have enchantment removal. I do have disc, but it's first on the second turn. So mostly my deck is viable in almost every situation. It does not have very poor matchups, maybe against the Underworld Dreams. On the other hand, I think it handles a lot of different decks very well. The deck or also robot decks that's very in at the moment, and then it just comes down to how do you use your resources best. And I do like to play that sort of magic because then my skills or lack of skills can decide if I win a game or I lose a game. Do I play my sinkhole on the right time? Do I bait at the right time? Do I play my creatures at the right time? Do I block out at the right time? Stuff like that, because then it's an exchange game, and that I'm pretty good at, in my opinion. Of course, other people can can also have an opinion about that, and so this is why I'm pretty confident with this deck and playing it, even though I've been playing it differently. The last tournament I was playing in, I actually had two Sinkhole vampires in it, and a guy asked me, why do you play tier 2 creatures in your deck? And my first thought was, this is not a tier 2 creature, but I know that in some people's eyes it could be a tier 2 creature because it's not a very main deckish kind of creature, but it's still a 4 for 5 mana in a deck where you have loads of black mana, so it's obvious that this is the kind of creature that you do want in your deck. So I'm very happy about the Sinkhole Vampires, but I think I'll try to go another route this time, a little more action, a little more pace in the beginning, and try to control it while I attack. Well, I think that was all about that. I'm glad to been showing you my deck, and I hope hopefully I'll meet you on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to playing, and in these Corona times, the possibilities of playing a good tournament is almost too good to go past me. So I hope for some very good magic. I really hope, looking forward to seeing some really nice cards, and I hope that you will all go in with the same spirit that I do. That it has to be fun. It's good. It's fun to play, but it's also fun to throw down or make some good combos and do some good trick plays and stuff like that. So, all in all, thank you for listening. I hope to see you on Saturday, and take care. Bye.